please feel free. Please feel free to write into the chat where you're joining us from today. Boston, Encino, Toronto, Encino. I recognize some of these names. Shalom Aleichem. Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Wow, fantastic. Pacific Palisades, yay. That's Los Angeles, for those who don't know. Anyone else? Feel free to type in. Where are you joining us from today? California, Reseda, Scottsdale, Arizona. Hi, Mickey. Calgary, fantastic. Michelle, and Allentown, Pennsylvania. My goodness. Westwood, LA, Santa Monica, Tarzana, Venice, yes. Hello, Jerome. And Bellingham, Washington. Hi, Wendy. And Sue from LA. Wonderful that you're joining us. We are going to begin in about 30 seconds. Ottawa. Von Arum, Zoffenamerika. New York. Kolja. Sei begrüßt. Und okay. Sehr fein. Ich meine, dass wir wollen anheben. Ja. Vivian, sei so gut.
Okay. Shalom Aleichem, Miri und Jane und euch alle. Es ist ein großes Vergnügen für mir, im Namen von dem Komitee für Yiddish bei der Toronto Jiddische Föderation euch zu begrüßen. My name is Vivian Felsen, and it is a great pleasure for me to welcome you to today's program featuring Jane Peppler, who I have just met for the first time. And I've been very anxious to meet her ever since seeing a little preview of her video today. And I think that we're all in for a really extraordinary treat today, a very, very unusual presentation. And thank you, Miri, for organizing this presentation. I can't think of anyone more creative than Jane Peppler. She, not only is she a brilliant researcher and researching old Yiddish songs that have lain hidden and dormant for so many years, but she's a talented musician and she knows how to do animation, and she's a visual artist. She's just so unusual in so many ways. So I think you're really going to enjoy this presentation. And Miri is going to tell you a little bit more about her before she starts.
Großen Dank, Vivian. Thank you so much. So ich heiße Miri Coral. My name is Miri Coral, and I'm the director of the California Institute for Yiddish Culture and Language, one of the co-sponsors for this event. And it's always a große Vergnügen. It's always a real pleasure to join forces with our co-sponsors to bring you provocative and unusual programs about Yiddish. I especially want to thank the Toronto UJA Committee for Yiddish, my counterpart, whom you've just heard from, Vivian Felsen, and the behind-the-scenes whiz, Sharon Power, for being the gracious technical host today. And I also want to thank our other co-sponsor for spreading the word, which is so important, Der Nister LA. And thank you all, hartlichen Dank euch allen, for attending today, for sein mit uns heint. I'm so glad you're joining us in real time today because it's a lot more heimlich. But you do have a chance to tell your friends to watch this program later, or to watch our previous programs on our website, yiddishinstitute.org, or on the website of the Toronto UJA Committee for Yiddish. And I just want to give a little shout out to my any current and former UCLA students who are joining us live today. What I love about Yiddish, was ich bin verliebt in Yiddish, and one of the things that has kept me in the game for over 25 years is that it keeps reimagining and reinventing itself. True, all living languages continue to evolve, but Yiddish is the only language and culture in modern times was hat gehat azoi gewaltig die Wurzeln untergehackt, that so violently had its roots cut off. And in spite of this, or one could even posit, because of this martyrdom of an entire European Jewish civilization, Yiddish is a vast source of inspiration to artists of all kinds, whether they have it in their bones from birth, or whether they come to it from outside the cultural and generational folds. New poetry, stories, novels, songs, and music are composed in Yiddish. New plays are being performed. New visual arts drawn from Yiddish words and portraits of Zoom classes. You have only to check in with God Google to discover the ever-expanding new Yiddish universe. And just as important, if not more important, are those individuals who have found inspiration from and devoted themselves to the mining of a source that sort of went underground, lost, like the continent of Atlantis, because of that great mid-20th century cataclysm. But how does one, even with the greatest devotion, find the means, the vehicle to attract and engage younger generations, without which secular Yiddish would surely soon succumb? Well, it's my greatest pleasure to introduce someone who has discovered one such way. Jane Peppler grew up in Chappaqua, New York, graduated from Yale University with a degree in Russian language and literature, worked as a poster designer, sonnet writer, typesetter, flipbook artist. She directed the a cappella ensemble, the Solstice Assembly, and produced the annual Solstice Extravaganza at Duke's Page Auditorium, UNC's Playmakers Theater, and elsewhere. She played and sang music of the British Isles with the Pratie Heads, I may be pronouncing that wrong, from 1981 to 2013. She was the longtime music director of the cantor corps at Judea Reform Congregation and director of the Triangle Jewish Chorale for 14 years. She's performed all over the US and internationally, and currently performs with world music ensemble Mappamundi. In 2015, she was even the grand champion at the Yiddish songwriting and performing competition in Mexico City, which was called Der Yiddischer or Der Yiddischer Idol, the Yiddish Idol. And the song she wrote for the contest was Ich kann schon nicht mithalten. I can't keep up. She's also a prolific translator, having translated 3 novels by Jacob Dinesen, numerous articles, and of course, Yiddish songs. Her 230-page compendium called Yiddish Songs from Warsaw, 1929 to 1934, the Itzik Zelonik or Zelonik collection is available as a paperback and a digital download. And she has published 10 CDs of Yiddish music, which are available at skylark2.com. We can write it in the chat later. A former teacher of voice and fiddle, The instruments she performs include violin and viola, the English concertina, piano, and most unusually the Appalachian dulcimer, also known as the lap dulcimer. As you can imagine, all of these, as Vivian was saying, all of these creative and technical skills have led to her prolific and entertaining animations, rescuing once popular Yiddish songs from oblivion. This program is a bit different from others that Cycle and the Toronto UJA Committee for Yiddish have done. We'll hear indeed about Jane Peppler's animation journey with Yiddish songs, and we'll also have a chance to hear some of the end results. So sit back, relax, verbringt gut, enjoy. And now, Jane Peppler.
Thanks to Miri and Viv for asking me to do this presentation on my Yiddish animated videos. I'll talk today about why I made them and how I made them and the path I took to get here. Let's start with an example. This is a video I'd forgotten about until I saw your presentation on husbands who abandon their families and come to America. Leibke fort in Amerika. Leibke comes to America is a long song. It took 2 sides of a 78 to tell its sad story. Listening to it would be pointless for anyone who doesn't understand Yiddish on the fly, which is most of us. So captions are essential. I made this mostly with a free program that records while you draw on a screen. I scrawled it into Microsoft Paint, scene by scene, and then synced each short video to match the length of the scene. Wenn Leibke hieß, ging Amerika gefahren, hat sein Weiberstock geklockt. Du fuhrst da weg, oi weh zu meine Jahren, hat Leibke zu ihrer Säu geklockt. Ich fuhr weg in der weiter Welt mit Panosse, wird mich Koppa glicken. Du wirst sehen, dass von dem ersten Geld will ich dir eine Schiffskarte schicken. Gedenkst, Leibke, du lässt mich mit der Kind, auf eine Schiffskarte sollst du bald absparen. Sorg nicht, Reisel, und bleib sie mir gesinnt, und Leibke ist weggefahren. Beschollen ist Leibke in Amerika angekommen und geworden dort der ganze Maschine. Stark zu der Arbeit hat sich genommen und geworden dort der größer Verdiener. Und Leibke lebt in dem goldenen Land, ist in New York allbreit. Nur schreiben a Briefle zu sein Weiber heim, hat Leibke nicht kein Zeit. Und Resel sitzt dort beim Wigle ungespart, dem Kopf gebeugen tief. Aber Briefe lese sie wart und es kommt kein Brief. Sie singt ein Lied dem Kind, fahren werden mir geschwind zu dein Taten, und Leibke, wer Sport hat, euch geputzt, weist und versteht als Ding. Mit a Landsmeut läuft herum verschwitzt und will kaufen a brillanten Ring. Nur plötzlich hat ihm die Meut der Mund in sein Weib und Kind geschrieben hat Leibke kein Russland, a Briefele geschwind. Und Reisel liegt dort nebekrank von Hunger und von Kält. Bei ihr in Kopf liegt der Gedanke, als ihr Mann ist gegangen von der Welt. hat's nie stehen. Nur plötzlich von Lecken so Briefel gekommen, sie springt herab von dem Bett. Der Brief abgerissen und lesen genommen, geschickt hat ihr Lebke Agett. Verloren hat Resel ihr gesund und kaum was sie sagt dem Kind. Wir haben uns ist gehofft und gewahrt, der Tate hat uns beide abgenarrt. Schlaf ein, mein Kind, fahren werden wir nicht mehr zu dein Taten, und lebke mit sein Kalezipe. Ging beide zu der Hippe. Und Resel dort klagt und der Hasen da sagt, Baruch atah Moshem. Chasen im Hakala, Amen. Und Resel ist geblieben allein. It's my nature to avoid what's popular, which is why I have labored in obscurity my whole life. I've never understood the appeal of doing again what somebody else has already done. So you could probably name the top 20 Yiddish songs. As an example, here are 18 of the dozens of recordings of Tumbalalaika you can find on YouTube. The top 20 Yiddish songs may well be your favorite Yiddish songs because they're the only ones you know. But for every Yiddish song that's well known, there are hundreds just as good that nobody knows. As an example, here's an excerpt from one of my favorites. I found it in the catalog of the Library of Congress. Mr. Malchamovas, Ich bin busy. I loved the title. The archivist found it for me. Turns out it exists only as an unpublished manuscript. It was never recorded, even by its composer, the famous Nellie Kassman. She must have written it after she'd recovered from an illness. She thumbs her nose at the angel of death in Mr. Malchamov's Ich bin busy. I had to decode the cursive, syllable by syllable. So this isn't an animation, it's just me singing, because the pianist didn't want to be on the screen. I have to do them this way sometimes, but I feel dumb singing alone to their pre-recorded accompaniments. Ich hab geschrieben Wörter, Musiklieder, sehr eine Sach, ungesungen vor die Jeden und euch goyim gleich. Die Welt hat meine Lieder auf die Records oder Print, nur als mein Dank wie das hab ich kein und nicht verdient. Gekommen ist das, weil ich bin sehr busy ohne Schier, und das ist, wenn der Malach hat, der hört das gleich von mir. Zu sterben bin ich euch zu busy, tracht ich bei sich. Wenn der Tod kommt anzugehen, sag ich nicht, schäbet mich. Mr. Malchamovas, ich bin busy. Zu sterben ist doch gar nicht so easy. Ich darf gehen zur Chassene, ich darf gehen zur Briss. Ein bisschen zu der Dancing darf ich noch gehen zu Fies. Mr. Malchamovas, ich bin busy. Gehe weg von mir, weil ich werde sie. Ich bin ein Mensch mit das, sag mal, ich gebe Schule, sehr für teure Mr. Malchamovas. Ich bin busy und jetzt so. Ich bin gelegen sehr krank, Nächten spät bei Nacht. Ungerechnet, wie viel Geld es hat mich ausgebracht. Plötzlich sehe ich der Mappamundi, er steht und sagt zu mir, du heißt Nelly Kessman, no? Komm je jetzt mit mir. Da hab ich gegeben erklär mit mein klugen Kopf, wie ob zu nahen dem Mappamundi, auf schneller ab. Eingefallen ist mir bald ein guten Plan und mit Meure und Respekt hab ich geantwortet dann. Mr. Mappamundi, ich bin busy. Zu sterben ist doch gar nicht so easy. In 2010, my friend, Professor Beth Holmgren, chair of the Slavic Languages Department at Duke University, got our band Mappamundi a grant to make a CD of cabaret songs famous in Warsaw between the wars, half of them in Polish and half in Yiddish. Researching the Yiddish half, I started with Issachar Fater's book, Jewish Music in Poland Between the World Wars, which you can download for free from the Yiddish Book Center. Fater was mostly interested in classical musicians, but in passing he mentioned a Yiddish nightclub called Azazel, established in 1926. So note how the Azazel program, which you can find at YIVO, is printed in Yiddish and also in Polish for acculturated Jews and Goyim who found this edgy entertainment delightful but didn't read Yiddish. Here's the Azazel logo. Sorry about my chickens. So I Googled Azazel and found this book, 35 of the most recent theater songs from Sambation and Azazel. Sambation was another Kleinkunst theater. There seem to be only 2 copies of this book left in the world. One's at the National Library of Israel. After months of emails and me paying loads of money, they sent me a PDF, but said I couldn't use it for anything because of possible copyright problems. So I started over. I made a pilgrimage to the only other copy, which is at the Library of Agudas Chassidei Chabad in Brooklyn. The librarian there was a little embarrassed to even have this book. He let me photograph it without restrictions, plus 7 other little booklets of song lyrics published in 1933 and 1934 by Itzik Shalonik and occasionally Pinchas Sapir. Here's an excerpt from one of the songs I found in Shalonik, Hariat, about a guy who proposes to his girl that they go off to Buenos Aires and start a Freilichheisel, a whorehouse, together. This was one of the few animations in which I tried to sync the mouth movements with the recording. It was fun, but really time-consuming, and I don't try it anymore. Randy Kloko and I recorded this on the first of my 3 Shalonik CDs in Odessa.
Schonjat, Harejat, Harejat. Ich lache na brillant und perlecher Beitsch. Zum Sof seh ich dich gehen mit Jossele dem Deutsch.
A nafkemine wär a Deutsch zu a Französ. Bei mir kann man bekommen a Macke mit der Reus.
Es kenn ich Schatten von Nase, Masse, Matten. Von Paraden, mir Platten ist mein Blatt. Spiel die Rolle, nur Pavolie. Sag schon Jat, Harejat, Harejat.
Ich will schon nicht mehr mit Jossele nicht gehen. Kein Boines, wenn mir fahren und Tage mir 2.
Und oiba so ist gut, wenn ich tage das. Du wirst sein wie Balleboste und ich der Balleboss. Es kenn ich Schatten von Nase, Masse, Matten. Von Paraden, mir Platten ist mein Blatt. Spiel die Rolle, nur Pavolie. Sag schon Jat, Harejat, Harejat. Es kenn ich Schatten von Nase.
I fell in love with Itzik. Here's my picture of him. Shalonik was a Badchan, but he mainly had a book and record shop at Panska 85, catty corner from the used hardware stores at the Warsaw Flea Market. He had a lending library, and he let the Young Poets Circle meet at his store on Sunday mornings. Here's one of his covers. He wrote, If you don't know the tunes of the songs, come by and I'll teach them to you. Well, I didn't know the tunes, but he's not around to teach them to me. And it turns out most of the songs Jelonek called the best and most famous of his era were so long forgotten that today's biggest Yiddish music experts had never heard of them. My theory is that many of the singers died in the Holocaust and that the 78s were fragile and not what you'd take along when you were fleeing for your life. But I also think after the war, people didn't want to sing silly, funny, cosmopolitan songs of the Kleinkunst cabaret scene that died with Jewish Warsaw. I spent a few years traveling around the country, even to Europe, looking for the melodies. Some exist as sheet music, printed or in manuscript, but most only survive on rare, scratchy 78s, which were hard to pry out of the clutches of librarians worried about copyright. Some I had to transcribe while sitting in a reading room with a pencil and manuscript paper because librarians would not allow the songs out of their sight. After 3 years, I'd found 106 of the Jelonek and Azazel songs. 20 are still lost and probably always will be. My book, Yiddish Songs from Warsaw, contains sheet music, chords, translations, transliterations, alternate verses when I found them on the 78s, and the strange spellings under which I found the songs so others can follow the trail back to the originals. For instance, this song, which Itzik, no English kenner, wrote out this way, a mistake, I finally found under this spelling online. In all, we made 3 CDs of the Yiddish songs from Warsaw. But here's the rub. Nobody was ever searching for these songs because they'd never heard of them. My goal was to have them heard, ideally to have them enter into today's repertoire alongside Tumbalaika with other people singing them. So YouTube's a place where people browse and find stuff without explicitly looking for it. So I wanted to put the songs on YouTube. But for YouTube, there needs to be something to look at. So I tried my hand at animation. Here's a snippet from the first animation I made 9 years ago, I think with Microsoft Movie Maker. The technology for amateurs was pretty primitive. For the first scene, I drew with crayon on pieces of paper, and I built a plywood rig to hold the drawings in place, and I took pictures of them with a camera, and I transferred the pictures from the camera to the computer, and then I stacked them together. I wasn't able to sync them properly, and the Movie Maker resolution is terrible. Nonetheless, here's one verse of a mistake, or a mistake, from Warsaw, and it is not the only song in the Jelonek collection about a masquerade ball. And I guess you can imagine why, after the Holocaust, people were not interested in singing about masquerade balls.
Auf a großen Maskenball bin ich amol gewesen und dorten inmitten Saal hab ich a Maske der Sehn. Sie hat ausgeguckt, schön kokett und ich als Kavalier, oi, ich gib ihr a Kuschel Naglet. Und ich bin schon bald fertig mit ihr. 12 Säger ist angekommen. Hoi weh, was ich hab dorten der Sehn. Sie hat die Maske abgenommen. Sie ist nur mein Schwieger gewesen. A mistake, a mistake. Ich hab gehabt a mistake. Ich hab gemeint, dass ich schön und zum Saft. Oi, gar nein, oi, mein Kopf, oi, mein Nose. Ich hab gehabt a größen Toast. A mistake, a mistake. Ich hab gehabt a mistake. Ich hab gemeint, dass ich schön und zum Saft. Oi, gar nein, oi, mein Kopf, oi, mein Nose. Ich hab gehabt a größen Toast.
This next song, Die ewige Mame, was the Schlager or hit, from a show by the same name composed by Misha German for his wife Lucy. I found the song filed as El Bike Mama with a Q at Florida Atlantic University, which shows why you have to browse whole collections rather than just use Google search. I paid handsomely for them to send me the PDF file. The piano part is 7 pages long. It's very involved. On the 78, Lucy sang only the big tango chorus, along with a declamation about how rotten kids treat their moms. I sang the whole thing. I experimented with Adobe Illustrator to make this video. In the last chorus, I kind of traced old photos of my own children and other kids I love. Since then, my Adobe Illustrator program has been corrupted, so I can't use it anymore. Beth Holmgren sang along on the chorus to add some firepower.
Mame zu sein ist jede Freuds Verlang. A Mame zu sein ist ein göttlicher Geschenk. Nur a Freu kann fehlen, a Mames Fried und Glück, wenn auf dem erstgeborenen Kind sie gibt dem ersten Blick. Meg das Kind sein mies, bei der Mamen ist es schön, jeder Miene les ist, jede Narrischkeit ist Molechein. Das Lied von allen Liedern ist das Lied beim Wiegele, was die Mame singt ihr Kind von dem chlorweißen Ziegele. Schlaf, schlaf, mein Teierkind, ei lu, 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 lu. Schlaf, schlaf und sei gesinnt, ei lu, 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 lu. Es treffen sich Tag von Hunger, von Neut, das Kind darf und gar nicht wissen. Die Mame, sie reißt von sich die Haut. Vor ihr Kind geht sie den letzten Bissen. Es hofft die Mame, wenn sie wird werden alt und schwach. Werden die Kinder ihr bald sollen, nicht nachher Sach. Zum Sof wird sie vergessen, nimm es unteressen. Elend die Nacht, allein die Tag, die Kinder, sie gehen sehr eigenem Weg. Von keinem geacht, von keinem geschätzt, alle zuerst, nur die Mame zuletzt. Ewige Mame, wirken vielen dein Zar. Ewige Mame, bleibst ein ewiger Narr. Bist Makrif dein Leben, dein Glück und dein Gesicht, mit dein Herz, mit dein Streben, erziehst du dein
somebody on Craigslist to give me a lesson on the movie-making programs, Premiere Pro and After Effects. These were really expensive programs, even the old copies I bought. They're so old, they won't run on Windows 10, so I'm nursing along my Windows 7 computer. When it dies, I don't know what I'm going to do. When I got as far as I could with the Jolonic songs, I fear the last 20 will never be found. I moved on to a collection called American Yiddish Penny Songs by Morris Rund and others. It exists only at Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati. I got it from them on interlibrary loan. It was supposed to be a book, but in fact it was a microfilm of 200 song sheets from the turn of the 20th century, song sheets that were sold by peddlers on the streets of the Lower East Side. They'd stand there with a basket and they would sing the song, and if you liked the song, you could buy the song sheet for a nickel. The originals are in a box in the library basement. They were printed on terrible paper back in 1900 and 1910, so they're worn out, crumbling, dark brown, almost illegible. I cataloged the microfilm for my own benefit. The librarians hadn't done it because none of them know Yiddish. When I sent them my catalog, they were so happy they rescanned the whole collection and sent it to me. I spent a ton of time cleaning up the scans, and then I started looking for the melodies. It was way easier than the Warsaw Project. For one thing, the songs are older, so they're all in the public domain. Here's Morris Rund. He liked to put his picture on most of his song sheets. He was a baker. Look, it says, "I'm a member of Local 100," and "Don't forget the strike of the family people the boss messenger sent away just because they belong to the Bakers Union. Do your duty and demand bread and challah with the union label." I've gotten to love the world of the Lower East Side around the turn of the 20th century. The songs are full of English words immigrants were learning as fast as they could. Many of these texts are set to American pop tunes of the time. There were 200 songs. I couldn't spare the time to animate them. I started putting my cleaned up scans on the screen for the visual. That's good for educational purposes, but it's a little dull for casual viewers. For an example, here's the first and last verse of a great song about how to get ahead in America.
Hat sich mein Weibel stark zerflammt, genug in Schob dir sitzen, als wären soll der ganze Schopf versammt, genug scheune schwitzen. Mir stehen's gesagt, das Schneiderei hat nicht die Werte Schischke, ein Spaß, was du verdienst dabei, es ist nur von Hand in Kischke. A tachlis gib a klär, und her mich zu nur her, a storke lo mir renden. Du arbeite nie weh, bring alle Woche die Pay, und ich will das attenden. So I will ich euch beweisen Tage gleich, das Wissen ist a Joischer, wie mich hat mein Weib, mein Herz und mein Leib gemacht, für ein Stückel Euscher. Jetzt, wenn ihr werdet wählen, reden zu mir, hab ich kein Zeit zu hören. Ich bin gar nicht derselbe Mensch, was früher mich achten Millionären. In Lodges bin ich gut bekannt, a ganzer Rädelführer. In einer bin ich Präsident, in der zweiter Kassierer. A Held in Politik, ich weiß a jeder Trick und hab a große Idee. Sollen Republiken nicht glatt, wär ich a Demokrat, a bin nur die Matbehe. Und von Leser Schneider Jing ist geworden Gich und Ging, der Businessman Mr. Laser, mich schrei in die Welt. Das ist Kischke Geld, es art mich wie der Chaser.
While I was finishing up with the Morris Rund collection, I went to the first European Yiddish Woche in Greece, where I met Professor Vivi Lax. She studies vernacular Yiddish songs, but of London, so we are soul sisters. After everybody went home, she sent me 26 PDF issues of a magazine issued by Yehuda Katzenellenbogen called Lieder Magazine, or Song Magazine. Half of each issue was lyrics to the current hit Yiddish theater shows, but the other half comprised new Yiddish lyrics written to American Tin Pan Alley and ragtime tunes. She found them at Evo, but when I went there to look them up myself, the librarian couldn't find them. Anyway, I spent a few years finding the American pop songs and fitting the Yiddish lyrics to them. Often the old Yiddish was so smudged it was almost unreadable, so I put transliterations on the screen. It turns out many viewers vastly prefer this because they don't know the oisius. I do a lot of songs this way now. Here's the last verse of Zurich in Schneider Shop, a Yiddish version of Back, Back, Back to Baltimore, which Randy Kloko and I sang on our CD, Yiddish Ragtime.
Mir hat mich kremiert und mich verschmiert. Bald auf der Stage hab ich heraus marschiert. Ich mach mit die Hand, zeig mein Talent. Nur wer ich bin, das hat man bald erkannt. Und wie ich steh und sing für sich, hör ich von der Galerie ein Geschrei.
Say,
Geh schon zurück in Schneidershop. Herab vom Stage, du Portia, hurry up. Potatoes seien gefallen wie Schnee, von der Galerie flieht a Fäule Rebel trifft mich gleich in Kopf. Oi Menschen, sagt, was ihr wünscht. S'ist nur wirklich, was man hat mich nicht gelünscht. Ich hab der Herd nur sehr geschrei, hab ich gleich geengt verzeiht. Ich geh schon zurück in Schneidershop. Ich geh schon zurück in Schneidershop.
Another song found in Lieder Magazine is this one, How Do You Like a Border Like This, written by Nachum Meir Shegevitz, a.k.a. Shomer, who considered himself a serious novelist and playwright. But Sholem Aleichem destroyed his career by dismissing him as a hack who wrote potboilers. Here, the original American song makes fun of the rich iceman, who one supposes is profiting by being part of the Ice Trust. Shomer's version, though, mocks yet another bigamist. He canoodles with his landlady, but he's horrified when she divorces her husband. And then, here comes his wife and kids from Europe. Here are the first and last verses.
Wenn Sie willen sparsam sein, nehmen Sie auf Border in Stube rein. Die schönste Herung kleidt man vor ihm aus, weil von ihm kriegt man dem rennt bald raus. Der Schmutz in der Border ist schön und jung, bei der Mrs. Beult er bald als Ding. Der Mann lässt sich über ein bisschen leck, und im ganzen Zimmer gibt sie dem Border weg. Wie gefällt euch also Border? Willt ihr euch sein also Border? Immer Kalle ist groß und klein, wo's herrscher nein. Schon gettend ist die Mrs. Jetzt zog sie zum Border, bin ich dann, und der Zure verwascht dem Border schlecht. Auf dem Unglück hat sich gar nicht gerecht. Sie fragt ihm, hast du nur Geld bei dir? Weil ich will gehen dingen, rums bei dir. Wie geht schon mit ihr, ihm helft nicht das Sind. Kommt dann sein Weib von Jürgen noch mit der Kind. Wie gefällt euch unser Border? Willt ihr euch sein unser Border? Im Mekane ist groß und klein, was öfter nein.
Of all the types of animation I've tried, it seems stop action done on Photoshop is easiest and quickest, and it follows an early hobby of mine, creating flipbooks. I used to hold one piece of paper in a little notebook up to the light and trace through it onto the next, making small changes. In Photoshop, I can copy a frame and make small changes to it. I end up with a stack of frames, and Photoshop will make a GIF. Then I dump the GIF into Premiere Pro. As an example, here's my most popular animation to date. It's had more than 12,000 views. I used knockoffs of some popular cartoon characters to tell the story of a girl and boy who fooled around and found out.
Oje weje Mammele, sis geschehen a Drammele. Ich bin gewinn a Bacherl, jetzt bin ich a Mannele. Leben teich breckelig, dorten auf a Bänkele. Gesitzen bin ich mir allein, kommt mir zu mir zu gehen. Oje weje Mammele, sis geschehen a Drammele. Ich bin gewinn a Bacherl, jetzt bin ich a Mannele. Zum Morgen zog ich Malachel, du wirst sein mein Kalachel. Bisslech weiß hab ich der Sehn, komm in Wald spazieren gehen. Oje weje Mammele, sis geschehen a Drammele. Ich bin gewinn a Bacherl, jetzt bin ich a Mannele.
Ohne so ist ich vielen dick, in Wäldele spazieren dick. Ich weiß allein nicht, was gesetzt hat mir sich auf den Goss. Oi, weh, Mammele, es ist geschehen a Drammele. Ich bin gewinn a Mädele, jetzt bin ich a Damele.
Gekischt hat sie mein Käppele und gegeben mir ein Äppele. Was weiter ist geschehen, darfst du Mammel verstehen. Oje weje Mammele, es ist geschehen a Drammele. Ich bin gewinn a Bacherl, jetzt bin ich a Mannele. Jetzt von dem Liebele in a kleinem Stibele, a Schenkler, Stiel, a Tisch, a Bett, und es käm mal zu der Zett. Oje weje Mammele, es ist geschehen a Drammele. Ich bin gewinn a Bacherl, jetzt bin ich a Mannele. Und bei a Wiegele sing ich mir a Liedele, es pischtet dort a Kindele, und es schmeckt wie Twindele. Oje weje Mammele, es ist geschehen a Drammele. Ich bin gewinn a Bacherl, jetzt bin ich a Mannele. Oje weje Mammele, es ist geschehen a Drammele. Ich bin gewinn a Bacherl, jetzt bin ich a Mannele.
Here's another one, done with the barest minimum of movement. I didn't come up with any ideas for images in the chorus. I regret having nothing better than the dancing jelly beans.
Wem ist denn nicht bekannt, der Minig auf der ganzen Welt zu geben? geben ständig dir die Hand, weil es kostet doch nicht kein Geld. Kurz, sie ist der Eulen gerät, dir Sorgen vor Gesundheit. Und beim Kommen nicht geklärt, man sorgt sich Gott vors Herz. Steckereien sei nicht kein Freier, Steckereien, es kostet nicht teuer. Und mit auf alle Wegen trott man dir die Hand entgegen. Scholem Alechem, Brüder, steckt da rein. Steckereien sei nicht kein Freier, Steckereien, es kostet nicht teuer. Und mit auf alle Wegen trott man dir die Hand entgegen. Scholem Alechem, Allah Besteckereien. Mein Cousin Itzig hat a Weibel, sehr schöne, gore Pracht. Kommt sein Freund rein in Stub, an Unglück trefft, nicht so gedacht. Und laufen mit dem Freund sie, und Itzig verzweifelt, weiß nicht wie, trefft ihm einmal sein Freund in Gas und sagt zu ihm, ich was. Steckereien sei nicht kein Freier, Steckereien, es kostet nicht teuer. Du darfst sich vor mir gar nicht werden, wir können sich mit dir zuteilen. Scholem Alechem, Itzig Steckereien, Steckereien sei nicht kein Freier, Steckereien, es kostet nicht teuer. Sie wird verbeten, waschen, kochen, dir auf Schabbos mir in der Wochen. Scholem Alechem, Itzig Steckereien. Mit mein Weibel bin ich gegangen in Theater jene Nacht. Geht vorbei a schöne Weibel, kokettiert, zu mir gelacht. Geht sie reden böse Wort, Burget scheut mein Weibel dort. Sie lost der Rob auf mir Nos und fragt mich, was ist das? Sag ich, Steckereien sei nicht kein Freier, Steckereien, es kostet nicht teuer. Kocht sich nicht der Sesum, siehst, weil sie will wissen, wer du bist. Scholem Alechem, Allah Besteckereien, Steckereien sei nicht kein Freier, Steckereien, es kostet nicht teuer. Kocht sich nicht der Sesum, siehst, weil sie will wissen, wer du bist. Scholem Alechem, Allah Besteckereien.
I'm always trying to figure out what's the minimum I can offer that will satisfy the casual listener's need for interesting images. I really enjoyed doing this one of my most recent. Alles kommt doch von upstairs. Everything comes from upstairs.
Alles kommt doch von upstairs, von upstairs, von upstairs. Von oben wirft mir alles durch. Ich hab endlich Rums gekriegen, ich darf nicht kriechen stecken. Mein Flat ist auf dem Ground Floor, zieht der Back. Der Flat ist nicht der schönste, ich kicke aus dem Fenster. Mein Yard ist viel mit Garbage, es ist ein Schreck. Dort liegen Teppen findlich, alte Schiechen kenntlich, a Berg mit Ashes, a Sofa zerdreiter. Ich ruf dem Superintendent, ich frage ihm in Defendant, ist du so Jahrzehnten Senorita? Von wannen kommt das, frag ich will wissen. Was heißt von wannen, tellen mir listen. Alles kommt doch von upstairs, von upstairs, von upstairs. Yes, ich leken es nicht ab. Alles kommt doch von upstairs, von upstairs, von upstairs. Von oben wirft man alles durch. vergliest sich seinen Nektar, denkt sich ein Theater in der Bronx. Allein gehen wir laufen, die Tickets zu verkaufen, allein gespielt, allein gesingen Songs. Bei alle seine Szenes, geflogen ist Bananas, hat sich Tag gebaut und aufgeklebt. Geentdeckt das Theater, seh ich in draußen steht und verkauft Bananas 3 für 7. Bananas frag ich, wie hast du genommen? Entweder mir nimmt sich bei ihm. Alles kommt doch fein upstairs, fein upstairs, fein upstairs. Yes, ich legen es nicht up. Alles kommt doch fein upstairs, fein upstairs, fein upstairs. Von oben wirft man alles du herup.
I'll finish with my most recent animation, which uses one of my oldest Jelonic recordings. I compared its success to the automatically generated video the distributor had put online with only the still image of the CD cover. Nobody ever finds or listens to these robot videos. So this song, Lo Lanu, was put on YouTube by RapNote 9 or 10 years ago, and it has to date 17 hits. The animated version I put up a few weeks ago had 62 views on its first day. In this song, Hermann Pfennigstein intentionally conflated Lo Lanu, the Sukkah's prayer, with Lo Elenu, let it not happen to us. So we start in Shul on Sukkot, then have the shortest Megillah ever, and finally wander out into the market looking for a girl with cash.
Es fragt Mensch da jeder, wenn Sukkos kommt zu gehen. Der Lula fährt stark und behält dem Tratzel von groß bis klein. In Schule rein läuft Gechrebt Zalel, Sukkos in der Früh. Der Lula schockelt beim Hallel und sagt dem Leulani. Und wer sie ist nur jed, oi, 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 singt es mit ihm nicht. In der Zeit dort beim Ständer schreit sich dort Rebsender, Leulani. Und Moschen aus dem All schreit euch dort a Gewalt, sie hacken dort das Bodek, der Reb der Dein, alle schreien Leulani. Wer es gedenkt nicht von einmal, in dem Held, was hat das Volk Israel gewollt bringen von der Welt, ist gekommen ab Sore von Shoshana Bore, vor uns alle Jeden. Hat ihm sein Weib die Rohre abgegossen, die Zorre, bin ich gewinn zufrieden. Gehangen hat man sie alle, oi, 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 Augen schon Scheile. Geworren's Homen die Kapare, jetzt da die Ableschare, Leulani. Gehangen hat man alle Kinder, weil so der hängt was in der Leulani. Morte auf dem Pferd, Homen tief in Drert, se Caparossi, se Halle, Fossi, Leulani. Bei Heimtickenzeit ist da sehr viel junge Leute Sach, was nur das eine ist sehr Ziel, ein Mädel mit Geld das Sach. Wenn ein Bocher packt ein Mädel mit der fette Business, sympathisch muss sie sein der Ziel. Kein hat sie nicht kein $1000 mit der Beut von Wurstschisne, sagt der Hossen, Leulani. Wer will das nicht haben von kein Weib, kein Ole, oi, 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 so schreien auf den heuchen Kohl. Leulani, ich liebe Mädels alle, soll haben a Beut in der Halle, Leulani. Alle Jinken haben ein Dehe, am Meut mit der Feste mal Behe, Viele mein Schwerter, all mein Rebnossen, will $1000 wären noch Hossen, aber der Mädel schreit euch mit ganzem Keuch, Leulani, Leulani.
Maybe everybody knows animation is time-consuming, but you'd never believe how long it takes. I can spend hours sometimes animating 20 seconds of music. While I'm doing it, I'm always second-guessing myself. Is this the best use of my time? Then I think, is any of what I do worth doing? Then I think, what is worth doing? Not questions, easily answered. So thanks for watching, and now I'll take questions if anybody has any.
That was so wonderful, Jane. Really,
Thanks.
so wonderful. The creativity and the humor is just incredible. Do you know how many hits that song has now?
No, I haven't checked since that first day. It's not worth, I mean, it just makes you feel bad if nobody
Yes.
watches it. And if you watch people's videos, could you just check like? That would take you one click, and people feel happy when their videos get likes.
Great idea. Vivian, do you have a question to start with? And anyone
Yeah,
who
and
has questions, we didn't say this in the very beginning, but if you have questions, please write them into the Q&A, and we're very happy to respond. Okay,
Yeah.
so Vivian, yes.
Well, first of all, that was fantastic. And I'm sure that everybody now knows why I was so excited about having you here today. It was such an inspiration to hear about everything that you've done. And for me personally, I also started off by studying Russian history and literature and language and so on. But wow, the things that you have done and and undertaken such difficult tasks and your patience and your perseverance. I'm really impressed.
Thank you.
So I am just going to start this off by asking, I'm just curious how Miri found you. And maybe Miri will have to answer that.
Yeah.
I just, well, you know, as I mentioned in the beginning, I'm always interested in finding how Yiddish is reinventing itself, and what people are doing, often just out of their own devotion, you know, labor of love, to keep Yiddish culture alive, but in new ways, in brand new ways. And I just happened to attend a conference that was put on by the International Association of Yiddish Clubs, and one of the topics, one of the classes was on animation. So Jane, you should all know, is not the only one who's been working with animation to bring Yiddish songs alive, but she has an extraordinary amount of work and creative work.
But I have to say that the other ones are much better. They were done by people who actually knew what they were doing. I was just learning, like, I would just push buttons to find out what would happen. In fact, I look at them and I cringe. I could do a better job now, but on the other hand, it's just, there isn't enough time to do everything. But the other videos are better than my videos.
It's possible, but I don't think anyone has done as much as you have, and many of the ones even that you showed today are amazing, and they're engaging and funny and beautiful to look at, so all of those great things. So anyway, this is why I was so happy that Jane would present for us, and I hope the rest of you enjoyed it as much as we did.
Well, we're thrilled to have you, and we have a very good and big audience for this. You'll find out later. But
do you want me just to answer these questions in the question box? So the first one is, where in Europe did Yiddish theater flourish? It was everywhere. There was Yiddish theater in France and all over Eastern Europe and in Russia. I mean, I guess maybe not in Greece, maybe not down there, but in all of the places where people knew Yiddish, there was Yiddish theater. Let's see. YIVO has it's the Yiddish Book Center that has books that you can download for free. YIVO has a ton of stuff, but you kind of have to go there and brave the scary librarians to deal with that. So let's see.
They also have a bunch of things digitized. So if you go to their website, you can also find lots of documents digitized. I don't know about songs and music, but many enormous collection. So there's that too.
Oh, well, that's good to know. And I've been doing this for 10, 12 years, and there's a lot more available online. In fact, a lot of songs that I had to go all over the place to find are now on YouTube. So, if I had waited, it would have been easier, I guess. Steckereien, I see here, was sort of copied by the Barton brothers in the Joe and Paul advertisement. I didn't realize they used that same tune. Yes, I can talk about why so many English words were used. And yes, I do believe that it was cooler. I think that people who came to America they were desperate to be accepted into their new world. And I think actually a lot of these songs taught people words, like the music cover that went by very fast called Pleasure. All of the verses in that song explain to you what pleasure is. So by the time you've heard the song, if you're a Yiddish speaker, you know what pleasure is. But I do think it was supposed to show that you sort of had the inside track to the new world. Yes, that was Putin. I use anything that I can think of. It's one of the hardest things about doing videos is figuring out what visuals to use. And so I sort of free associate, and whatever comes up that I can find, that's what I use. I didn't end up in Chappaqua. Well, I was a baby. My parents took me up there and planted me. That's where I grew up. Oh, hi, Sherry. Sherry Marin says she would send my current database, and I would love that if you would send me a copy of your current database, because yes, you can always be hopeful that the things will come along that you couldn't find originally.
So some people mentioned English being incorporated. So did you find that the songs from Poland, pre-war Poland, had Polish incorporated in them as well?
Yes, absolutely. But the funniest thing to me was that in that song, A Mistake, they were trying to use an American word. And so first of all, Jelinek had no idea what the word was. He listened to these songs, I think, off at the 78s, and then he just wrote down the words. He didn't know what it was. But in that song, it says, Ich hab gehabt a mistake. So right. I don't think they actually really knew English. I think they kind of grabbed onto a couple of words and used what they could. But yes, there's a great deal of Polish in the songs from Warsaw.
And I think one thing that might surprise the younger people is just how essentially bawdy these songs were, right? Touching on the Oy Vey Mamele is a wonderful song, obviously, about oops, I didn't know it was going to lead to this. kind of thing, but also talking about prostitution, right? Where did you find that that was a running theme in many of these songs, whether the American songs or the pre-war Polish songs?
Actually, it's more folk songs from Warsaw that are about prostitution. There are many of them. I think that Jeanette Levitsky has done somewhat of a study of those songs on prostitution. And I also talked quite a bit to Avram, the one, I forgot, I'm spacing on
In
his name.
Argentina?
Yes,
Limboy?
because he did a lot of study on that work, and he's quite incensed that the songs make it sound like there were so many Jewish prostitutes. He doesn't think that it was true, but I think it's just like songs about bandits and gangsters were so popular, not just in Yiddish. I mean, think of the Apache dancers. That was a big thing all across the world at that time. So the underworld in all of its glory was just obsessing people at that time.
Did you see this latest question from Carl Sunshine?
Um,
Do you see it? Would you consider Das neue Lied one of the most popular songs or less well known?
I don't know it by that name, so I guess I don't consider it one of the most popular songs.
Okay, any other questions, folks, before we? No, Vivian, I think you had another one earlier.
Well, I just wanted to, I can't think of what, but the question was earlier. I am really impressed the way you incorporated everything and how each song is a social phenomenon or some historical phenomenon like prostitution and so on and so forth.
I think there's like infinite number of PhD theses in these songs.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right. Well,
Absolutely.
I think your videos are so impressive because they're really like collage. And the other videos, I didn't see them, may have been more professional, but yours has something so spontaneous and wonderful about it. And that's why I think they're great.
Well, thank you.
So we should probably put on, maybe you can do this, Sharon, in the Q&A, your website, Jane, so everyone knows, not just the one for purchasing CDs, but.
Oh, well, I could put, I have many. YiddishEmporium.com has a lot of my, I'm typing it in the box right there, has a lot of the stuff that I have for sale is on there. If you want to know more about these songs, the two best places to look are YiddishCuriosities.com. It used to be called PolishJewishCabaret.com, but it's branched out. And that now, YiddishCuriosities.com, is songs from, say, after 1929. And the songs that I did from the turn of the 20th century is YiddishPennySongs.com. So I put that into the chat box too. And you can read about the songs there. A lot of times I've put all the texts in there. I've got pictures. It shows where I found them. When they were invented off of American songs, I put the American songs in there. So that's a place to go if you're interested.
And don't you have just a website devoted to you and your work?
Well, you could
is it JanePeppler.com?
Yeah,
No?
I think I think so. So I put that in the chat box too.
Okay, good. Yes, people should know how to reach you, perhaps, if they would like.
I would always be happy to go around and do this program for people. Bring my odd songs. The only person that I know that's done one of my songs is Daniel Kahn, who did Menschenfresser, and he did a fantastic job. He's had a gazillion hits on it. I was so happy. I felt like one of my babies had finally made it into the big time.
Okay, so that's interesting. So that song that he recorded and performed was one that you found?
Yeah.
Menschenfresser? Yeah, fantastic. That's exactly Yes, so that's probably my last question for you. What are you hoping? I mean, I know you talked about that there are, only like a dozen popular Yiddish songs that most people know about, if they know anything, and you wanted to, bring out more songs that they should be aware of. But what else? What are you hoping will happen from all of this amazing devoted work that you've put in?
My only goal was that people would take up these songs, that other musicians would stop always doing Bei mir bist du schön and do some of these other songs. It grieves me that these wonderful bands start up and the first thing they do is do the same 20 songs that everybody else has already done when there are so many great songs. I can't say that it's happened yet, but I hope that it will.
Well, Daniel Kahn is a great start, right? Yes, with Menschen Presso. That's fantastic. Yeah. Here's a question.
It's actually more like a comment, I think.
It's more of a comment. Exactly. It's a comment. Okay, so everyone, last chance for questions. No? Okay. Vivian, anything?
Well, I have so many questions about how you did your animation and finding all these things. I mean, and where do you have the time? You said that you've been spending your time, but it sounds like you do so many things. It's incredible, and I really thank you for restoring this piece of history to us, to everyone. I think you've done a great service to Yiddish culture, to Jewish history, to so many things. As you say, PhD students could find dozens and dozens of topics to write about.
Wait, I have one more thing I want to say, which is that I think these songs have to have captions, because it's not like saying, oh, here's a song about I'm wandering through the woods. Like they're so funny. And when I do these songs live, people come up to me and they say, honestly, they say, I didn't know that Jews could be funny like that. Like that they didn't believe that there could be clever songs, because if you don't have the captions, you don't know what the jokes are. And so whenever I do a show, I always have the captions on the wall, because if people, you can't say, these are the funny jokes that are going to be in the song I'm about to sing. And you can't go, here are the funny jokes in the song that I just sang. It really has to be at the same time. And we just have to admit that most people need captions, even if they know Yiddish. It just goes by too fast. So I think that maybe why these songs are having a hard time catching on is they're too clever and they go by too fast if you don't have captions.
Yeah, they are remarkably clever. That definitely impressed me. They're just wonderful whole story, especially the first one you sang. That of course related to our last.
I know, amazing,
program.
Right?
Yes. The poor abandoned wife, and children, that came up again with the border. The wife, this is a theme, this is an important theme that I think it's worth knowing about. Yeah.
Those two themes are very related. The border phenomenon, which many songs were about, and the abandoned wives. And the white slave trade. I know in Toronto, it was the first play ever to be produced in 1906 was the Weisslich Glafin. It was a big, huge problem. And many things have been written about it. So you did a great job, even in preparing this program today, of incorporating all these different themes. So,
well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
It was our pleasure.
Yes, thank you. Schönen herzlichen Dank euch allen, Frau Sein mit uns, und speziell Frau Jane. Herzlichen Dank.
Bye-bye.
Alle.
Bye.